6 former care workers who were caught abusing people with severe learning difficulties have been jailed. Wayne Rogers, who was sent to prison for 2 years, received the longest sentence. He was among 11 staff members at the Winterbourne View private hospital in South Gloucestershire who admitted 38 charges of either neglect or ill treatment after an undercover investigation by the BBC's Panorama programme. Well, the other 5 were given suspended sentences. Speaking outside the court, families of the victims called for changes in the law to protect vulnerable adults. Our correspondent John Kay is at Bristol Crown Court with more. John.
Yes, Kate, the dock inside court number 7 here was absolutely packed. All 11 defendants, people who used to work together, a few minutes ago sitting side by side inside the dock being sentenced one by one for what the judge described as a culture of cruelty. And of those 11 defendants, now more than half of them are in prison. Their job was to care for some of society's most vulnerable people. But instead, these workers abused their patients and abused the trust placed in them. The footage gathered at Winterbourne View by BBC Panorama appalled millions of viewers. Patients with learning difficulties being soaked and slapped, punched and taunted, not just on one day, but over the 5 weeks of secret filming.
We're going to bring her in because she's shaking. We're going to bring her in because she's shaking.
Wayne Rogers, who's 32, was said to be the group's ringleader. A senior care worker and also a father, he pleaded guilty to 9 charges of ill-treating patients. Today, he has been given the longest sentence, 2 years in jail. In all, 6 members of staff are now in prison. Outside court, patients' families gave their reaction. They said they were pleased that punishments had been meted out, but
we'd like you to remember that our children have suffered greatly, and it will take a long time for their physical and mental scars to heal. For some, that may never happen.
The CPS treated these offences as disability hate crimes, crimes based on ignorance, prejudice and hostility. We brought this aggravating feature to the attention of the court, and it was reflected in the sentencing today.
The judge said Castlebeck, the company which ran the hospital, had shown a scandalous lack of regard for patients and staff.
I'm going to keep it, all right, until you can say sorry.
He said there had been systematic abuse and a culture of cruelty at Winterbourne View. This care worker, who was given a suspended jail sentence, left court giving his own explanation for what he and his former colleagues had done to patients.
It was just a very, very difficult place to work. Understaffed, high pressure, 12-hour days, no breaks.
There's still no excuse for what you did.
But there are no excuses for what anybody did. And as today's happened, all I can do is apologise to everybody for what happened.
Winterbourne View has now been closed down, and Castlebeck says the entire company has made major changes. The judge said if it hadn't been for the BBC Panorama investigation, the abuse would not have come to light. Well, just while we're on air, we've got a statement from the Department of Health which said this investigation has shone a light on major flaws in the system, the government promising to address those flaws, and ministers say they will publish final recommendations on how this kind of thing can ever be avoided again very soon. In the meantime, we understand that 17 of the patients' families are now pursuing a civil action trying to get compensation from Castlebeck, who owned and ran Winterbourne View. Kate.
John, thank you. John Kay there.
11 former workers at Winterbourne View have been sentenced for abusing those they were trusted to look after. 6 are behind bars this lunchtime. The neglect was exposed following an undercover investigation by the BBC at the private hospital. Well, the sentences were handed down at Bristol Crown Court, and Andrew Plant is there for us now. Andrew.
Amanda, one of the defendants today described his own behaviour as vile, disgusting and unacceptable. It has been 16 months since the BBC Panorama programme exposed the abuse that was taking place at Winterbourne View. They filmed things like people being slapped, eye gouging, patients being soaked in water, painful restraint techniques being used, hair pulling and verbal abuse. So today, here at Bristol Crown Court, 11 former members of staff being sentenced for the part they took in that abuse. the highest sentence, that of 2 years for Wayne Rogers, who was described as the ringleader, and 5 other former members of staff also being given prison sentences, 5 more being given suspended sentences and community service orders. Now, we heard from a spokesperson for the families of the patients here today. They said it would be naive to think that that abuse wasn't going on before Panorama went undercover at Winterbourne View, and they gave their thanks to that programme and said, without that secret filming, we wouldn't be here now.
We'd like you to remember that our children have suffered greatly, and it will take a long time for their physical and mental scars to heal. For some, that may never happen. However, they are our children, our family members, our friends, and we love and cherish them and are proud of them.
Today in court, the judge said Winterbourne View had been run with a scandalous lack of regard that would have continued were it not for the Panorama programme. I should just add that 17 families say they will now be pursuing compensation in civil action against Castlebeck Limited, the owners of Winterbourne View.
Andrew Plant, many thanks.